the tax revenue will be low. So instead of this approach, I will recommend that let's review the number of taxes that we have currently, and we introduce only taxes that have wide tax base, look at the tax rates so that people can conveniently pay taxes.
So does that suggest that if they review all of those, perhaps remove all of those multiple or double taxation and have a higher tax, you think people will conveniently pay?
No, you don't issue a high tax rate. I think that's what you're talking about. Now, there was a study in 2012 that was done. I was part of the study, and that study was commissioned by African Development Bank. And that study, the report says that there are certain taxes that we should introduce, eliminate some, and we will increase our tax revenue ratio to GDP to 25%. So now I don't think that document was discussed, and
actually at the federal level.
Yes, at the federal level, and that program we had Minister of Finance in that program when all those things were discussed. But I don't think that document has been has been considered. So what I'm saying is that instead of creating distraction, distortion, and tension, let's look at the current tax laws we have. Let's amend those tax laws. If you can give 9 months grace, why not use that 9 months to address the current tax law? We are talking about asset here. Now, Section 33 of the company income tax talks about minimum tax. Now, strictly applying that provision or that section, what that means is that you are discouraging economic growth, industrial development, because
with this
that section,
the new scheme, you mean?
Yeah, if that law is still in force, is still in place,
minimum tax.
Yes, the minimum tax. Now, what that provision recommends is that you tax a company using 4 parameters, and usually the highest will be the net asset. So what that means is that if you borrow money, borrow money from the bank, and you are setting up industries, what that means is that you are acquiring assets. Eventually, you will be paying taxes on those assets. And by extension, what that means is that you are also paying money on borrowed funds. So that will not encourage
how does
economic development.
If we have to look at assets, and the minister did talk about people who own houses outside of Nigeria and trying to see that they catch them in this net. If we have to look at that scenario as against people who own properties at home as well, is Nigeria ripe to begin to look at property tax to support this initiative?
Now, currently we don't have property tax in Nigeria. So what you can get is income generated from those properties. Now, if I'm using my property outside the country for residential purpose and I'm not earning income, what that means is that I'm not supposed to be paying tax on it. So that brings us to looking at the drawbacks in this policy, because if you say, yes, I have a house in somewhere outside the country, yes, am I using it to generate income or not?
What about when the funds with which you buy or purchase the asset is taxed?
Yeah, so it's become a legal process, legal, that before buying those assets you actually pay tax on your earnings, and your profit. That is
She
what
made
you
a specific example saying that, for instance, you're earning 1 million naira in Nigeria